Hello and welcome. This is Michael and Merrylinn with Deep Dives with New Perspectives, here to talk about some interesting astrological ideas today. If you like our channel, please subscribe, please like, please share with your friends, please send us comments. We're here to share whatever it is that we perceive of the astrological passings around on the planet as we experience them here on Earth. So speaking of experiences, was that a segue? I don't know.
Of experiences. Well, speaking of, hi, I'm Merrylinn LeBlanc, and Michael's partner in this deep dive venture. We both are local astrologers in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And last week, on Monday of last week, a week ago yesterday, the planets Venus and Mars were in an exact opposition in the middle of each of their signs. And I kind of been dwelling on that because, of course, it brings up, Venus was in Libra and Mars was in Aries, and it brings up all kinds of relationship issues, and whether they're in sync or on each other's, at each other's throats kind of issue. And also, I'm very much a fan of Sabian symbols because I've just found how revealing they are. And they're in the exact middle degree of each of those signs, 16 degrees rounded up. And that middle degree is really a synthesis of the energy of a sign. And so for Libra, it's bringing together all the energies that make up this sign that has to do with peace and harmony and balance, and trying to have them work out any problem areas together. And for the middle of Aries, you have that independence of Aries, the individual, the unique person, and you have the exuberance of one's individuality just bursting forth. So there's this whole kind of balancing need. And I just found it very odd in the middle of this ongoing drama in the United States of Trumpers versus people who just go anybody but Trump. I mean, we're definitely in a polarized situation, and so to me, looking, just watching the news and stuff. Watching Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, they're doing very much the middle of Libra thing, trying to keep a balanced energy and trying to fix what many of us think should never have been unbroken. Like, for example, in the news today, I heard that Biden is going to once again make Bears Ears a national monument. The public lands have been desecrated by the current United States administration, and so some of the things that I see being done in preparation for a change in administration have very much to do with this Venus-Mars polarity. I mean, I don't want to get into my personal life, but actually a client I talked to this week, one of the issues really had to do with relationships and trying to find a way to not bring in the conflicting energies that really work against the kind of relationship that was being described. And so it's sort of like somebody in the relationship dynamic has to take the mature stance of what is needed to make this relationship work. That's it. And we're still in that full phase. They've moved out of the exactness, obviously, because they, both those planets move fairly fast. I mean, Mars takes 2 years and to circle the zodiac, and Venus only a year roughly. So it's not going to stay in that phase very long. But that's been on my mind, and it sort of made me just start thinking about the natural zodiac and the polar opposites and how they work together. Mars wants to look at Venus and say, oh, what is this thing called relationship? And how do I do that? This
How do
is
I
interesting.
conquer that?
Pardon me?
How do I conquer that? Or how do I claim it? Because it's just, I mean, that's what's so beautiful in a way. I mean, astrology, is in so many ways, as we know, and like you're illustrating, it's about the polarities that we experience in life, right? Whether it's masculine, feminine, dark, light, oh my God, so many different polarities throughout it, but it's also what creates the passion and the dynamic and the beauty. I mean, without oppositions, we don't have a full moon. We don't have that brilliance that happens in the night sky every month, or sometimes twice a month when we're lucky, to get to have that experience of having it reflected back to us. And then it ends up being this, is it projection? Is it really what the other person is doing? Or are we experiencing what we perceive about ourselves and throwing that onto them? I remember hearing a long time ago in a therapeutic situation that in relationship, we are each 50% of the time in the relationship fully and dedicated, and 50% of the time out of it. So it means when you think about it, that 25% of the time things are really, really great, typically. 25% of the time it's really, really crappy. And 50% of the time there's an amazing level of ambivalence that flips back and forth, which is what polarities are about, right? Finding where there is that harmonic balance. Who's going to give? Who's not going to give? Are you giving from love? Are you giving out of a place of being conquered or dominated? I mean, there's so many different elements that get played out in all that. And then, can you also step back and sometimes laugh about it and see the humor and the biological determinants that kind of biological and planetary determinants that kind of push us into these situations that all of a sudden we wake up and go, oh my God, am I at that again?
Yeah, well, I mean, the polarities or the oppositions in astrology are opportunities to grow. Going back to Venus and Mars, just we could use other planetary energies as well. But it's sort of like, I as the individual being Mars, looking at Venus saying, oh, I want to know what that is. Is that what I am? And so this opportunity to be a little bit like the other takes one into new territory. Otherwise we wouldn't get. And go back to the governmental situation. Things would be pretty blasé if we didn't have this clash of political and policy differences that say, no, this is what I want. Oh, yes, that's what I want. And so how, we talk about it in terms of compromise, and the compromise creates something new. So all of this is really about growing, about evolving and becoming greater than who we have been.
Right, because Mars, especially in that Aries place, is the I am, right? And the search is for who am I? And then it looks across the table at Libra, especially with Venus, and says, and then Venus is like, who am I when in relation to one another? Is who am I in relationship to you? And who are we in relationship to one another? Because the other thing that's interesting that happens wherever there's a dyad, meaning two parts, there's inherently a oneness, right? So when two people come together in astrology, we'll do something what's called a composite chart. We'll do something that will bring the midpoints of the chart for the two individuals and show kind of like the third entity that is being created, which is the relationship. Davison chart, I believe, is a time of meeting. There are two different ways of doing it, and each of them have their own little thing, but we're not going to talk about that today. But I think what's really fun with that is, like, you know, we're talking about these oppositions, and I think that's what astrology is here to teach us. And one of the other things I think you and I talked about is like the moon Saturn, you know, these other seemingly opposite. I'd say Saturn almost with any of the planets, to be honest, provides that oppositional energy.
Yeah, well, the moon is, you know, constantly changing, whereas
I've heard
Saturn
that
is
line
like,
before. I've heard that line before on Moonwise and ksfr.org.
and Saturn, you think about, oh gosh, the status quo, okay? And so the moon looking at Saturn goes, we're stuck.
Literally.
We're stuck. And yet she keeps changing. And so Saturn looking at the moon is going, maybe there's something to it. And actually, what I'm thinking about too with Saturn as one of the karma planets is Saturn really is telling us to change, but things actually, you know, it stays the same only to emphasize what needs to be changed. This is where those two energies working together. I don't do this on Moonwise, but it's one of the offerings as a consulting astrologer, is because I'm process oriented. This is all Dane Rudyard's work. Is to look at like those two planets, Saturn and the moon, and look at that. And it's a monthly cycle, just as the moon cycle with the sun is. But it's a cycle that's really telling us about how static we are versus how much in change we are going. And so to look at that cycle can be very rich in terms of any karma that one has with the area where Saturn is located, because Saturn spends, you know, like 2.5 years in a sign. So
But the other thing that's so fascinating, I mean, what's very interesting about each of these that we're talking about, you know, whether we're talking about Venus and Mars or Aries and Libra or Saturn and the moon, these interesting things that seem polar opposites, and yet there's also these inherent similarity threads that run through them. Because when you think about it, the lunar cycle and the Saturn cycle, the progressed lunar cycle matches the Saturn cycle fairly closely. So that about the same time that you have your first lunar progressed return, it's about the time just before you have your Saturn return. So it's this interesting thing about maturation. The moon, you know, is our body, it's our emotions, it's our feeling body, it's our, you know, how we kind of instinctually know that which is ourself and all around us. And Saturn is that what gives us the skin, it gives us our bones, it gives us the structure and the framework and the outer boundaries. I mean, because that's one of the things that's so important. The rings are, you know, in esoteric we call it the ring past naught, because it's about coming to a place of self-responsibility, letting go of being ruled by our emotional nature. Because, you know, think about it, those of us who have been able to survive our teenage and our 20 years get to see that there are inherent benefits, that there are things that happen over time that from our younger vantage point, we cannot even begin to understand. Hello, we're both third quarter moons. So, I mean, I don't know about you, but it's like, you know, life is always a surprising thing. Like, oh my God, I didn't know that I didn't know.
what do you think I do why do you think I do the moon minutes and moon wise? Because it's sort of, it's an ongoing opening of awareness of, oh my, oh my goodness. You know, I often say with the moon cycles, you might find that what your daily behavior is perfect and doesn't need to change. The majority of the time for me, it's like, oh my God, I didn't realize this is what I've been doing and how unproductive that is, or how much it's working against me. And so the majority of the time I find that I have to adjust, and and I say it kind of reminds me too of the people, your family knows you, and your longtime friends know you, and living in a very different state from both of those people. It's always interesting. Yeah, right. It's always interesting when visitations happen with people who've known me from my youth, whether it's family or friends, and they're both in my life still. Uh, how they perceive me today. Some of them are amazed. They're going, "Yeah, you're not the same person."
And what's really wonderful and juicy are those friends who are able to reflect back those threads that have been within us all along, because there's always an inherent, I think, integrity in the self that just continues to grow strong, kind of like a tree continues to grow. It's like our self as we begin. That's, I think, one of the benefits of growing older as we become more authentic. That's very Saturnian as well, especially the Saturn moon relationship. Stepping into that authenticity and seeing that. But then also, the friends who have the ability to actually see us in our new light, in the new way that we're becoming, those are also who are really important, because they don't hold us in fixed places. Those of us, I think, who move to new places and therefore have new relationships and create new families, so to speak, it's because we want to have we need a new freedom. We need to break away from, I moved here into Santa Fe 20 years ago when Pluto and Saturn were on my ascendant in Sagittarius. And it was, I don't think I could have become, I was in the process of becoming who I was, but I don't think I could have done it to the extent, because when we're in our home areas, when we're influenced by that clan, that's very Cancerian energy, which kind of, is the ruler, moon is the ruler of Cancer. That Cancerian stuff keeps us really stuck. And we're kind of seeing that play out on the national level right now. It's like, my family ideals are more valuable than your family ideals. It's like, no, the truth is that most of us have the same material, emotional, physical needs, but the way we need it in our particularity is where it differs. But I think there are basic roots that are systematically similar as being human beings.
That's interesting. I'll have to dwell on that on a national, on a national level. But what's interesting too, for what you just said, and this makes for the difference in dynamics. I have Capricorn in the fourth house, the home area, real estate, land, grounding, and every time, and this is roughly a 28 to 30-year cycle. Every time that Saturn is transiting that area, and it's ending the transit right now. It's been transiting for the last couple of years. But every time in the past, I've moved. And I've been watching that because I'm going like, it's not happening right now. Interesting. And I've not necessarily moved, out of a city or out of a state, but moved dwellings, in terms of living, or moved to different areas of the Bay Area. Moved from Southern California to Northern California, that sort of thing.
That's Saturn. I mean, for those of us, I mean, I have Saturn in the fourth house in the interesting place of Pisces. So it's like, the sand castles on the beach. But I also have a grand trine in Earth. So there's a strong stability. When I had my first Saturn return, I bought my first house in the Bay Area, which I really did not. I mean, given the craziness in the Bay Area, even in, God, when was that, 93? It's been crazy since the 70s in the Bay Area. I mean, it's not possible to buy reasonable housing anymore. And actually, the sad part is it's starting to happen here in Santa Fe as well. I mean,
when I sold the first house I owned, and that was in a period of less than, it was way less than 10 years. I have math right now, but I sold it at almost double the price.
California.
So it's yeah.
Does that have to do with your Saturn
a little out of whack. Yeah.
Did it have to do with your Saturn cycle when you bought it? Did you ever correlate that?
Saturn cycle to what?
To the purchase of your first home?
I can't recall at the point. It would take me a little bit. I'd have to look
Get
at
the
my chart.
calculator out and
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, I don't
use off.
recall that. Where was Saturn in 1976?
I don't have my
And
ephemeris.
he's gonna go ahead and look it up.
Let's pause this for a second. Saturn was at 12 degrees Leo.
Oh, so it was in my 11th house,
Oh, interesting.
which is one of its natural houses.
Right. That's true. Yeah. Right. And you're an Aquarian. You're an Aquarius sun.
Yes. Are we back on?
Yeah, we are back on.
Oh, okay. Well, you were asking me when I bought my first house.
Right.
Saturn was in Leo, which is my 11th house, which is one of Saturn's natural houses. Wasn't in its sign, but definitely. That being in Leo reminds me too of the polarity of the sun to Saturn as one of the co-rulers of Aquarius, as well as Uranus. And looking at that, I was thinking about just the whole issue of authority. You know, it's sort of like the sun. If we look at the sun as the center of our universe and what we consider the center of the zodiac as we use it, it's sort of like the sun is the authority, the ultimate authority. But Saturn represents authority on many different levels. The sun is really the ultimate in terms of you are spiritual beings. And as a spiritual being, there are universal principles that we live by, that we exist by. And Saturn respects those. And one of the issues around Saturn is respectability. Respect and actually plays the role of this, telling each of us individually, this is where you've gone astray in regard to the principles that you as a spiritual being should live by. And you have the opportunity in this life, and astrology can help you in identifying those opportunities, to make amends, to make adjustments, so the polarities are, I'm thinking of the seesaw, the teeter-totter. They're really the opportunity to come into balance. You have, the basic two choices are stay where you are and keep denying or opposing or fighting against, or look at this energy that's opposite you and say, how can I be in balance in relationship with it? That's
when you think about it, you get on the seesaw and it's like the two options are up and down. But the truth is the third option is just leaving, right? And that's, I think, one of the most painful parts for people who have and who are dealing energetically with harmonizing things, is for people when we have to just summarily dismiss someone, or when we are summarily dismissed. I think sometimes, we have these energetic agreements with one another to learn things. And there's a feeling sometimes when another person actually abdicates that agreement, when we feel there's a reason, that we're connected or that we're feeling drawn to someone, but maybe that person isn't at the time in their life, or maybe we're not at that right place in our lives to be able to be present. I mean, like, I think in my current relationship, I don't think I had the wherewithal and understanding to be in it at the level I am now, if it wasn't for the other relationships I've been in, and having had to experience the depth of humbleness and vulnerability and growth that life requires of us. I think Saturn is saying, hey, if you want to mature, if you want to get to that place you want to get to, you're going to have to do some work. Saturn is like, you better work. I forget who's the singer, but says, you want a Ferrari, you better work. You want a Maserati, you better work. You want a mansion, you better work. That's the thing in life. There's this magic, that idea like, especially I think one of the ones that put forward with it was the idea of The Secret, the book and the movie. And so
Mhm.
it's this thing of like, oh, as long as you affirm and da 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 da. I think first of all, that can be very shaming for people, who aren't able to affirm things into being. And it can also not acknowledge the fact that sometimes, we have to go through extreme periods of loss and deprivation in order to find out who we really are. And that's where, these oppositions, that's where these transits that happen that awaken us, where we have to kind of like make a decision. Am I going to face what I have to do, or am I going to get off the seesaw and become, kind of a bitter person? As we get older, I see two choices that happen with people. We either choose to remain and keep our heart open and continue to find ways to be in relationship to what is, or we slowly and systematically begin to say no, because life force is either yes or no. That's the ultimate polarity, yes or no. We say yes to life or we say no. And as we say no, like, oh no, I don't like that, oh no, I don't like that, and little by little life gets really super small until we find ourselves locked in our homes, which is interesting. Here we are in a pandemic, most of us are stuck in our homes right now anyway, but we are no longer in relationship. And I don't believe that we're here on the planet to be that isolated. I don't think Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that I think, and this goes back to when the 1970s, when Pluto was in Libra and coming into right relationship. Uh, we don't see the majority necessarily of couples, and I use that term loosely, or one-on-one relationships at this point yet. But it's like there's a point at which one recognizes that there's no longer growth. There's no longer, there's a stagnancy, say, in a relationship. And there are people that are doing this, that are recognizing, that are saying, you know, I need to go in a different direction, but I really honor what I've learned from being in relationship with you. And it has helped me to grow. And I hope that I continue to grow, and I hope that you continue to grow. And they part as friends. They don't part with, this is stagnant. I don't want this relationship anymore. It's like a more open, honest recognition that we seem to be getting into a rut. And maybe there's things that we can change and we will continue to grow together. Or maybe it's because I really feel the need to do such and such, to go somewhere else, or whatever, and the other person doesn't. But that's all part of it's like the compromise, where both parties come to an agreement, whether it's to stay or whether it's to depart, as versus the horrendous struggle that some people go through, and the ugliness of it.
As you say that, the thing that I think of right away is that one planet that plays a very interesting role of almost like the interweaving one, or the one who makes connections between all that is, and that's the planet Mercury, right? Because the truth is, what we really need most of all in relationships is communication. We come from, that I amness of the Aries is very much, where we're in our own little bubble, and that Venus across the way in Libra is saying, hey, you know what about me? Don't look at how beautiful I am. Don't you want to enjoy me? Don't you want to learn about me? And then through that opportunity, there's that opportunity to grow and become and have an experience of something greater than ourselves.
And Mercury in a natural polarity is in opposition to Jupiter and Neptune. And both of those planets, especially Jupiter, is about compromise. How do we make this work? What are the bonds that connect us? Neptune is all about unifying. And and so the conversation, this kind of reminds me of things like mediation,
Right.
where
Yeah.
where you have and there are okay, it just slipped in my mind. There's a form of communication. I believe his name was Rosenberg started.
Martin Rosenberg, I believe his name. Yeah,
forget
yeah.
what they called it, but it's
Nonviolent
actually
communication, or not. It's something beyond, because I think he went on to like doing this with countries, but it's like
right,
non-confrontational. Yeah, it's
right.
really brilliant.
Where you start to understand the differences. You don't. It's not a confrontational exchange, more than a coming to understand your views versus another person's views, and find a place of resolution that where it's not like we're at war with each other.
Can't we all just get along? That's that's the Venus and Libra motto, right? Why can't we, how do we find ways? Because I think in some ways compromise has become a bad word, right? Because especially to Aries, especially to fire signs, as we see like this president right now, we're going through this transition period. Here's a perfect example of Mars to Venus, right? The opportunity to offer compromise, the opportunity, we're being shown repeatedly over the last 4 years what a self-centering Mars energy is all about. Trump has Mars conjunct his ascendant. He has the star Regulus with conjunct Mars. He literally believes everything has to do with him. And the amazing thing is he's gotten everyone to do that. So so here's Venus kind of peeking it from the outside, and here's Biden and Kamala and and other people, fortunately other people, the Republican Party is coming forward. I think what's happening, I don't know, I'm an eternal optimist, I think, but I see this opportunity for saying, hey, you know what, there's great division, there's great opposition. How do we find ways to sow the similarities rather than the dissension? We see what dissension sows after 4 years. But what's also really nice is we're also seeing the reality of all the underbelly of what our country's been for the last, since its inception. And the raw underbelly is being seen and exposed. Hello, Pluto return in Capricorn, saying, hey, it's time to wake up and smell the coffee.
Well, some of that dynamic has actually made me stop in awe and appreciation of past presidents, some of whom I've not really, cared for one way or another. But the fact that that they rose to the occasion and were gracious was I at least, I don't know how many other people took that behavior for granted. And now I look at past years of exchanges, like I heard the other night, Michelle Obama graciously showed Melania Trump through the White House while her husband was being vilified by the incoming president. And her comment had to do with the fact that some of the things he was saying actually endangered her family and her children included, and yet raising to that grace. And what an example, what an example. So the gift of the dynamic that we're seeing right now is to really see a fuller picture of what is possible and what choices we have.
And to find ways to see the greater similarities. I mean, I think I'm hoping, especially as Jupiter and Saturn move into Aquarius, that, the other aspect of right human relationship really comes into bearing, and that there is a greater acceptance and understanding, because we do all need to find a way to get along. We do, we all need to, do we need to have aliens come in from outer space to show us how much we're similar? It's like, what, it's funny, we're watching a show the other night, and it's like, it's very interesting. It's called Utopia, and it's like, oh, humans don't worry about water until they don't have any. Humans don't worry about the environment until the environment is almost devastated. Humans don't, we're always, we continually be the grasshopper instead of being the ant, and realize, and that's back to that Saturn thing. What do we have to do to be good stewards? When we look back on past presidents and we look on past um, um, politicians, there's an understanding of not only, somewhat being self-serving, of course, because that's just how it's been, but of doing things that also provide for the greater good, so that it is a legacy. That's another aspect of Saturn, right? Is that legacy, giving something that really has a genuine gift that continues to provide a return over the years.
You're reminding me that without Saturnian energy, we have no manifestation on the earth. That Saturn is part of the creative principle.
We wouldn't have skin, we wouldn't have, but we would be just like a big blob amoebas. That's what Saturn gives us, is like, that ability to go like, no, that's my skin, that's me. Saturn gives us that idea and understanding of the separation of self, I think.
Yes, and what that separation can do.
Yeah.
Is part of it. Well, Michael, once again, we meet.
A pleasure as always. How can people find you?
Moonwise at ksfr.org is my email, moonwise at ksfr.org, where I do a weekly show called Moonwise, and a daily Moon Minute, which you can also pick up on podcasts. You can find those podcasts at ksfr.org under their programs. You'll find podcasts, or they're actually moonwise.libsyn.com, either way. And you can also call me at 505-690-1878. And you, Michael?
People can reach me at 505-690-3860. I'm available for readings, couples readings, speaking engagements. In fact, this Saturday, I'm giving a workshop for Kepler College on the esoteric explanation and understanding of the planets. And otherwise, you can find me at my website at coremichael.com. That's C-O-R-E, Michael.com. Please remember, share with your friends, say hi, share your ideas with us. And please be compassionate with yourself and everyone around us, around you. These are intense times, and the more love we can share with ourselves and each other, the better off we'll all be. Thank you, and blessings.
All right. Stay safe. Bye.